As the film begins, we're taken to a small remote town in Clarksville, Kentucky. A neighborhood is haunted by a string of murders that happened years ago. The killer calls himself the Clovehitch Killer. Even though he stopped killing over 10 years ago, the town still lives in fear and holds an annual memorial headed by their community pastor. In the same town lives a 16-year-old Tyler Burnside with this devoted Christian family. His dad, Don, is a handyman and troop leader of the Clarksville Rangers, of which Tyler is also a member. He lives in a small family with his father, his mother, Cindy, and his little sister, Susie. He also has Uncle Ruby, Don's brother, who lives in an elderly care facility and whom the family is caring for. After a morning meeting with the scouts, Don tells Tyler that work has been slow. He also mentions that Uncle Ruby's insurance increased, so Tyler won't be able to join the leadership camp to help with his college application. Despite feeling disappointed, Tyler knows they have to put family first. Later that night, Tyler sneaks into his parents' bedroom and steals the keys to his dad's truck. He meets up with Amy, a girl he goes to church with that he likes. Soon enough, they start making out in an empty parking lot. As they make out, Amy finds a picture of a naked woman in bondage near the passenger seat. Tyler immediately denies that the picture is his, but Amy is quickly weirded out by the situation and tells him to take her home. The following day, the family picks up Uncle Ruby and they attend church together during the praise and worship. Tyler can't help but feel like he's getting weird looks, especially from Amy. After the service, Billy, one of his church mates and also a scout member, approaches him and talks about a girl lurking in the parking lot. He feels creeped out by her and tells him that she does the same report on the Clovehitch killings every year. Tyler accuses him of having a crush on her, but Billy responds with disgusting things about the girl. Their conversation is cut short by Tyler's mom, who tells them that they have to go. As they leave, he gets the same weird look from the girls again. At home, Tyler receives a text from Billy and learns that Amy has told the whole school about the photo. Incident later that day, the family attends the annual memorial for the Clovehitch victims headed by Pastor Randy. After the service, Tyler confronts Amy about the photo and tells her that it isn't his. However, Amy tells them that she only told one person and didn't intend for the whole school to know. As Amy leaves, the girl from the church named Cassie approaches him. Tyler confronts her for being a weirdo, but she retorts back about the photo, prompting him to leave. Later, when his parents leave for the day, Tyler goes to his father's shed feeling curious about the photos. He searches through his father's things and finds nothing. But at the last minute, he spots a loose board in the floor. Curious, he opens it up and finds a dusty old box. Inside the box were countless bondage magazines and a single Polaroid photo of a woman tied up and gagged. On the photo, written in pen, was a caption that says, "Nora Lucky's favorite." The Polaroid disturbs Tyler to core and he stashes it back into the box. Next, Don gets back from the community center and goes to a shed, only to find that the lock has been touched. Later that night, Tyler lies awake in bed thinking about the disturbing picture he found in his father's possessions. Unable to sleep, he goes to the living room and looks up the name he found in the Polaroid. It turns out that Nora Devlin was one of the Clovehitch killer's victims. Suddenly, a light turns on and his mother interrupts his research, eventually sending him back to bed. The next morning, his mother sends him to his father to have the talk, thinking that her son has been up all night searching for erotic photos at the shed. Don tells Tyler that he knows that he took his truck last night. He then tells his son that he understands the conflicting feelings between being a devoted Christian and being a teenager undergoing puberty. However, Tyler leaves the awkward talk feeling more confused than before about his father trying to clear up his name. Tyler heads over to Billy and tells him that the photo isn't his, but uninterested Billy doesn't listen to him. Desperate for help, Tyler goes back to the church and sees Cassie again and follows her into the woods. He then asks her for her help in investigating the Clovehitch killings. Initially, Cassie hesitant, but eventually she tells him to meet her at 3 at her given address and to bring cookies with him. The next day, Tyler rides his bike to the address Cassie gave him. Once there, she gives him a box full of copies of evidence from a case and a book that talks about the killings. It turns out that her grandmother used to work on the case and wrote a book about it. She then tells him that every serial killer has a signature style like a fingerprint, including the Clovehitch killer. The killer had the same entry points, the same elaborate ropes on the bodies, and a Clovehitch knot tied to every victim's house. Cassie also mentions that she doesn't believe that the killer is stopped, and she's working to catch him on his weakness. In the evening during family time, Tyler lies to his family and tells him that he'll be spending his afternoons volunteering as a tutor. In reality, he'll be working with Cassie on investigating the Clovehitch killings. Tyler spends the next afternoon sifting through evidence with Cassie in her room. Unbeknownst to him, Don followed his son and is watching his every move. When Tyler gets back home, Don confronts him that he knows he hasn't been tutoring, but sneaked out to meet his girlfriend. He then tells him that he shouldn't lie to his mother and instead invite the girl tomorrow for dinner. As a result, Tyler invites Cassie over for dinner and asks her to pretend to be his girlfriend and not to mention any of the investigations they're doing later. That night, Cassie joins the Burnsides for dinner after an awkward start. Cassie hits it off immediately with Tyler's parents. On the way home, Cassie jokingly asks Tyler if he thinks his dad is the clovehitch killer. He looks horrified at the question and tells her about the magazines, the shed, and the Polaroid. She reassures them that it's normal for adults to have kinks, and there's no way that his dad could be the killer. When Tyler gets home, he joins his family in washing the dishes. Despite Cassie's reassurances, he remains disturbed at what he's just unearthed. At midnight, he hears knocking coming from his window. It's Cassie. She's come to tell him that the 5th victim received a note a week before she was murdered. Tyler then takes her to the shed and opens the loose floorboard, but the box is already gone. However, she reaches her hand inside and takes out a piece of paper. The two teenagers look shocked as they unfold a blueprint for what looked like a dungeon of horrors. Cassie quickly takes a picture and leaves. While Tyler goes to one of their vents drawn in the blueprint, he goes into the crawl space and finds a false wooden cover. He pushes the cover away and squeezes himself into a small makeshift den. As he turns on the light, he sees a small room with an incomplete toilet and shower. On the side is a box full of bondage magazines, grotesque sketches, and a small tin container. Tyler opens the container slowly and takes out a bunch of driver's licenses tied. Together with trembling hands, he sifts through the licenses and sees Nora Devlin. Tyler's worst fear has come true. His father, Don, is the clovehitch killer. The next day, his father insists that they go camping. Tyler is reluctant to go, confused about his feelings for his father, but he eventually agrees. In the woods, they bring their rifles, hoping to practice for Tyler's rifle merit badge. As they take a break, Don cleans out his rifle and asks Tyler if he's told anyone. Tyler tries to deny it at first, but he confronts them and lets him know that he's aware that Tyler has been into his shed and his crawl space. Don then reveals that the box belonged to his Uncle Ruby. When they were younger, both of them, Don and Rudy, had an interest in these kinds of photos. When they got older, Don stopped. But Rudy got worse, to the point where they had to ask him to turn himself, and that's when his Uncle Ruby tried to kill himself by crashing his car. Tyler is shocked to learn this, as he was initially told that his uncle got into a car crash, resulting in his condition. When asked about the photos, Don defends himself and tells him that he had intended to burn them, but there was never a right time. Eventually, he just stopped trying in order to save his family from hurt and scandal. Finally, Don then apologizes to his son, but Tyler tells his father that he either has to turn in the evidence or destroy it once and for all. When they get home, Don brings out all the magazine's photos and even the licenses and burns them all. Meanwhile, Tyler watches, thinking to himself that this is really the right thing to do. The next day, Tyler attends a class tying knots with his father, who continues to pretend as if nothing has happened. Then he goes out of class to talk to Cassie, who's angry at him for ditching her. She's finally figured out that the blueprint was for the Burnsides' house, and she's actually gone into their crawl space. He insists that it's not him, and that his father has explained everything. However, Cassie doesn't believe him and takes out the files from the case. Meanwhile, Billy goes out into the hallway and calls out Cassie for being deranged. He curses her, and Tyler immediately lunges at him in her defense of fighter-ups. And Tyler is sent to Pastor Randy, who reprimands him for his behavior. When Tyler gets home, he receives an apology note from Cassie on his window. The next day, Tyler boards the bus for his leadership program, as his father managed to find a way to fund his retreat. As Tyler bids his family goodbye, he climbs onto the bus with an uneasy heart. Meanwhile, with the son away, Don suggests to his wife that she and Susie should go visit her grandmother. Cindy agrees to take a week or two off and sets up the plan with her husband. The next morning, Don bids Cindy and Susie goodbye. Now he can go and set out what he really intended to do. He goes about his work, hangs out with the locals, and goes shopping. Later at the grocery, he meets a nice woman in the frozen section. He keeps an eye on her at the counter and stalks her all the way to her home. When he gets home, he goes up to the attic to take out his old equipment, even his old Polaroid camera. Then he sets up the camera in the living room and dresses as a woman in bondage with a mask and wig on his head. Next, he goes back into the bedroom and looks at the dresses lying on the bed. Suddenly, the doorbell rings. Immediately, Don changes his clothes and meets Cassie in the hallway. She's looking for Tyler, and he tells her that he's away on his leadership retreat. Then he takes the camera and asks her if she wants a picture, to which agrees. After he takes her picture, Cassie leaves after getting a call from her father. When Cassie leaves, Don inspects the photos he's taken and slams them on the bed. He throws a tantrum on the bed, screams in frustration. He was supposed to savor these killings and enjoy them, but now he couldn't. Everything is spiraling out of control, and he hates being out of control. Eventually, he regains his composure and drives to the woman's house. In her backyard, he inspects the vent going into her basement and ties a clovehitch knot onto one of her pipes. Later on, Dom attends church service with his brother and meets up with the scouts. When he gets home, he lays out all the equipment he needs for his killings and calls his wife to check up on her. Next, Don breaks in through the open basement window and quietly makes his way up to the living room of the woman that he stopped before. He hovers over the sleeping woman, savoring the moments before he makes his kill. The woman wakes up. He immediately points a gun at her neck and threatens to shoot her if she screams. He tells a woman that he just robbed a bank and he needs the keys to her car. He grabs her purse and takes out her keys and driver's license. The woman is trembling in terror as she examines the man who's about to end her life. Then Don takes a picture of her and adds it to his collection. Also, he threatens her by saying that if she tells the cops he has her picture, and he'll send out his friends. For her next, he orders her to grab his bag and follow him into her bedroom so that he can tie her up powerless. In that situation, she grabs the bag and walks to her bedroom crying. He then ties the woman himself, and she cries in pain at how tight the ropes are. He talks to her in his persona Lucky and strangles her with pantyhose, pinning Dawn to the bed. After a while, Dawn drags a chair into the room and looks at the woman hot-deed on the floor. He takes out her underwear and uses it to tie a plastic bag around her head. Then he takes out his camera, sits on his chair, and takes a picture. Meanwhile, out in the hallway, his son Tyler comes in with a rifle aimed at him. It turns out Tyler never went to the leadership program. After all, we're then taken back to a flashback scene. After he received an apology note from Cassie, he meets up with her at Nora Deplin's house. He tells her that he wants to hang out with her, but this clove-hitch stuff has got to stop. He follows her into the abandoned home, and they stay put in the living room. Tyler tries to kiss her again, but Cassie's insistent on continuing the investigation. She tells him that the killer entered the basement and killed Nora right there on the floor. Tyler walks out unable to take any more of this, but Cassie tells him that she just wants to know what happened. He finally gives in and tells her what his father has told him, that Uncle Rudy is the clove-hitch killer, but he tried to kill himself, and then he stopped. Cassie then tells him that she actually found something when she went into their crawl space. She found rope fibers identical to the ones pointed out in the evidence. Tyler accuses her of being obsessive, but she finally reveals that the reason why she's so bent on solving this is because she believes that her mother was one of the clove-hitch killer's unknown victims. It was years later when she realized that her mother's death was similar to the clove-hitch killer's victims, but no one would listen to her or believe her. But Cassie confronts him one more time, challenging him that if he has any doubt in his heart at all about his father, then he should help her solve the case once and for all. This convinces Tyler, and together they form a plan. When he leaves for his leadership program, he actually gets off the bus and heads over to Cassie's house. They begin piecing the pieces of the case. Together, they start following Don his jobs and even stalk him all the way to the supermarket. He sees him following the woman and even notices his lingering stare. They ride their bikes home, and Tyler sneaks into the house. While Don is distracted, he goes to his parents' bedroom and installs a GPS tracker on his phone. Suddenly, his dad comes in the room and Tyler hides behind the bed. He watches in shock as he sees his father wearing women's clothing. He sends a message to Cassie to help him, and she immediately comes to his rescue by ringing the doorbell. He then bails Cassie out by calling her and pretending to be her father back at her place. They keep their eye on the tracker and his dad's whereabouts. Cassie grows tired of waiting, and they tracked on back to the woman's house. When he joins Cassie in the backyard, she tells him about her horrifying discovery, seeing Don tie clove-hitch knot onto the pipe. They peek into the window and confirm that the woman from the supermarket lived there. Later that night and the next day, Don's tracker didn't move. The two teenagers return to Tyler's house and find that Don has left his phone on the bed. Tyler takes out his father's rifle and they ride back to the woman's house, where they find Don's car on the street. Then they break through the same basement window, quietly explore the house with his rifle out. Tyler and Cassie sneak behind a counter wall as Don walks in and takes one of the dining room chairs. Next, Tyler walks to the bedroom weapon in tow and finally catches his dad in the AC. Don reprimands him and tells him that he shouldn't be pointing a weapon unless he intends to use it. As Tyler demands his father turn himself and he orders Cassie to free the woman, Don then tries to turn the situation around and tells him that Cassie is manipulating him. But Cassie calls Don a liar and runs for the gun, but he grabs her and slams her across the wall. He then takes out the bullets from the revolver and coaxes Tyler to hand him the gun. Tyler, feeling completely conflicted between his father and this killer, reluctantly hands the gun to him. Don then points the rifle at Tyler and pulls the trigger immediately, but the gun is empty. Tyler then lunges at him, trying to pin him on the bed. But Don soon gains the upper hand. Tyler struggles as he kicks and scratches at his shoulder. Suddenly, Cassie comes from behind and hits Don's head with a lamp. With the impact, Don collapses on the floor, and she gives him another hit to the head later. As she tries to call the police, Tyler stops her and shakes his head. Weeks later, Dawn Burnside is still missing. Cindy, Tyler's mother, is on the verge of a mental breakdown, but has managed to keep it together for her children, unaware of what her husband was doing and what her eldest had done. When they go to the community center, Pastor Randy's waiting for them and tells Cindy the grave news: they have found Dawn's body. Later that day, Tyler meets up with Cassie again. They agree to do nothing, for they know the police will never be able to connect it with a clovehitch killer because the woman never saw his face. When Tyler gets home, his mother slips into his bedroom and talks to him. She tells him that the police had found Dawn's body and wanted to talk to him, but she told him no. Shortly after, his mother breaks down and he comforts her after his father's funeral. Tyler is awarded as a troop leader and reads a speech in honor of his father. He looks out to the crowd, spouting lies, for only he and Cassie truly knew what a horrible person Don was. He knows how he and Cassie dragged Don into the woods, set up the place as if he was camping, and laid out his gun as if he was cleaning it. The police and the people might believe that Don Burnside accidentally killed himself while cleaning his gun, but Tyler knows that it was his own finger that pulled the trigger.